this week, we have the Capital Area Master Naturalist. And I'm going to introduce, first of all, Andrew Herrod, and then he will introduce his two colleagues. Because most of you know Andrew as he's been leading hikes for the Austin Sierra Club and for Save Barton Creek Association for a number of years. Andrew grew up going to many of the parks in and around Austin, and this helped shape his personality into the naturalist and advocate for the environment that he is today. He has a degree in wildlife and fisheries science from Texas A&M. His professional background is in education with a focus in environmental education. He joined the Capital Area Master Naturalist in 2019 to learn new things and meet other naturalists and expand his network. After a couple of years of volunteering with the Austin Water Quality Protection Lands, he now works for that group in the Austin Wildlands Division as an environmental conservation information specialist. And in this position, he coordinates hikes and some volunteer activities in the Balcones Canyonlands preserves. So Andrew, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your two colleagues.
All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to talk louder than my dog, all right, chewing. And so first off, Lisa Hoddy is the board president on the Capital Area Master Naturalists. She grew up in South Louisiana and spent a lot of time outdoors, as one does when they live in Louisiana. And this grew into a love of nature and a desire to protect the places and spaces around her. She got degrees in business and education. She has 15 plus years experience in education, and she joined the Capital Area Master Naturalist just last year. She's channeled her passion and skill set into being an awesome board president for the Capital Area Master Naturalist, and she spends her time volunteering all over Travis County, enjoys spending time outdoors, and Argentine tango. I'll have to ask her more about that later. David Cook is the other gentleman who besides me, going to be presenting. He enjoys spending time out, being active outdoors, running, birding, nature photography. He has experience as a retired project manager with 30 plus years in information technology, and he's utilized that skill set to being an awesome class coordinator for the Capital Area Master Naturalists. So he helps the class coordinators organize and get set up with their classes, locations, curriculum, and all that good stuff for our Capital Area Master Naturalist. He's also on the board of the Bull Creek Foundation. Without further ado, I welcome Lisa.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is that working? Everything good? All right, and first I would like to say thank you to Phoebe for inviting us, and also for letting us skip to the next month, because I know you asked us before and we had to work on this presentation. And again, I will say I am a little nervous, so bear with me. David and Andrew, they're fine, so let me get through this. All right, thanks guys for having us. Again, we're representing the Capital Area Chapter of the Texas Master Naturalists. And we're just gonna kind of do a brief history of what the Master Naturalist program in general is, what the requirements are to stay as a certified Master Naturalist, and what we do throughout the community, committee work, building community education and outreach, a lot of volunteer service, and then we'll just wrap it up. So to start, what is a naturalist? In general, somebody who studies the natural world, making observations a lot of interpreting those observations, storytelling, educating others about what's around them, working to preserve, restore, protect the habitats around us. And the Master Naturalist program is in general committed to instructing volunteers, instructing people to learn about the local habitat around them. It's really important that we learn about what's immediately around us because everywhere is different. Ecological work, restoration work, all of this is different depending on your environment. So we work to train people where they are about their surrounding habitats and then how they can use those skills to go out into the community, to educate others, to work on sustainable use and conservation of the land around them. And this is one quote that I really liked. I read that being a naturalist means you know that being able to understand nature means knowing a few organisms deeply. And I really like this because when I first joined, I thought like, how am I going to learn everything about everything? But that's not what it's about. It's about knowing what you can about what's around you and doing the best for those particular things. Texas Master Naturalist program. So as many things, the origin story might be, there might be a few versions of this story, but we'll go with the official record here, is that it started in San Antonio around '96. A couple of groups got together recognizing the need for volunteers in the community and basically started a training program very similar to the Master Gardeners program, which a lot of you are familiar with. The first training class took place in 1997, and then an official partnership between Texas Parks and Wildlife and A&M AgriLife Extension formed, and thus the Master Naturalist program was born. The Capital Area Master Naturalist was one of the first 4 chapters, officially since 1998. And we are very proud of that. Since then, the Texas Master Naturalist program has grown to include 48 chapters and growing across the state, with more than 13,000 volunteers serving the Texas communities. So why do we need Master Naturalists? Well, as Texas Parks and Wildlife and San Antonio Parks and Recs discovered, dedicated, well-informed citizens and volunteers are kind of hard to find. This limits what community-based conservation efforts can get done. In order to fill that gap, the Master Naturalist program works to develop a core of master volunteers to provide these services. Master volunteers, master naturalists serve their communities in many ways. We do youth outreach programs, help with park operations, natural area and resource management, leadership with local conservation efforts, and just developing expert knowledge that can be shared with landowners, educators, anybody. Volunteer work often does need specialized knowledge, things such as serving for golden cheek warblers, doing particular girdling trees, all of these kind of things that, you know, this is what we do. We go out, we train, and we provide that service. Our mission is to develop a core of well-informed volunteers to provide education, outreach, and service for the beneficial management of natural resources and areas within our communities and for the state of Texas. And that well-informed volunteers is kind of the main thing of what we do. We really push the idea of getting out and volunteering, and as you'll see later, we require our members to volunteer a certain number of hours a year to keep their certification. Who is CAMN? We are lots of people. We've trained hundreds of volunteers since we started, volunteers from all sorts of backgrounds, skill, knowledge, experience, personalities. It is not just a club for environmental workers. I am from an education, teaching preschool background. I didn't know anything when I joined this group, and that's fine. That's what it's for. We have educators, artists, historians, biologists. We've got some science folks in there and we need them, but it's, we want to train everybody. We want to be welcoming to everybody. We want to be super accessible and diverse. The main thing we look for when accepting applicants is not a history of science education, it's a service background. We want to see a history of volunteerism and service to know that you're willing and going to go out into the community. Next, where's my little thing? David, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Sure, thanks, Lisa. Lisa mentioned that part of the mission of the Master Naturalist program and CAMN specifically is to educate volunteers. So as part of that, the Master Naturalists and CAMN have to go through formal training. There's 40 hours of initial training on a variety of different topics, which we'll talk about in just a minute. In addition to that initial training, the Master Naturalists are required to complete 8 hours of advanced training each year to be certified. So they have to go through their initial training once, 8 hours of advanced training every year after that, 40 hours of volunteer service as well to maintain certified. And that's really one of the heart of the program. Is it is a core of volunteers. We have annual chapter or monthly chapter meetings, just like the Sierra Club, which can count for advanced training because we have speakers. And there's also a statewide Master Naturalist meeting where there's lots of opportunities for education for members throughout the state. So I talked about the initial training, and we're in the midst of that right now. Generally, it goes for about 10 weeks, and each chapter does it a little bit differently. But for the Capital Area Master Naturalist, we divide it up into 10 Saturdays over the spring. We start with an orientation, and then talk about these different topics here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see the different presenters. You'll probably recognize some of those names. Kevin Anderson, who spoke last week, Val Bew, who many of you probably know from her work at the Wildflower Center and with insects, and lots of different excellent speakers that will.
Kevin Anderson was here last week.
Last month, excuse me.
Last month, yes.
We try to do a lot of work in the field as well. That's a challenge right now with COVID, but these are generally the different locations that we meet at to conduct these initial training classes throughout the program for new trainees. So in addition to the initial training that everyone has to complete, there are advanced training requirements. And that generally involves, taking a class or going to a speaker series or going on a Travis Audubon bird walking hike or things like that. Wildflower Center also often classes, and there's lots of opportunities. In addition, just like Sierra Club, CAMN has speakers each month that talk about a specific topic in detail, and those will count for advanced training for the people in the 8 hours of advanced training that they're required each year. At one time, field trips were something that the group did, and we hope to start those again as well as we move out of our COVID protocols. So we've talked about volunteering. There's a lot of different groups that CAMN partners with to provide volunteer service. This is a list of just several of them right now, from Austin Parks to Travis Audubon and all of these listed here, as others as well. And it really is important that service is the key of what the Master Naturalist program and what CAM is about. And because of that service, and because we have requirements for both volunteer service and training, what we do with each class is we try to have some volunteer service projects for those classes. I think Andrew mentioned that he was in the class of 2019, and one of their volunteer service projects was building of a chimney swift tower at the Deep Eddy Community Gardens. And you can see some of that work that the class of 2019 did there to help get some of their service hours. Another project was one where we partnered with the city of Austin and Texas Parks and Wildlife to deploy video cameras and the Vireo Preserve off of 360. And we've been doing this for almost 2 years now and captured a lot of different wildlife in the Vireo Preserve. And this is a project that's ongoing and will continue with the current class. And you can see examples of some of the wildlife that we've captured on the Vireo Preserve. I'm going to turn it back to Lisa, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of those projects and specifically some things that she's been involved with at Vireo.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so this was one of the projects from last year at the Vireo that I was a part of. We did a rain collection site. If any of you guys are familiar with Vireo, it's a reforestation site, part of the Balcones Canyon Land Preserves, and trees and other stuff are planted all around the preserves, and getting water to those is difficult. Also, we don't want to have to use, city water for this kind of stuff if at all possible. So there are scattered rain collection sites around the preserve. Some previous classes have helped build some of those, and we built another one last year as one of our class projects. We had to get a little bit creative to carry these giant barrels down a hill and into a canyon, but we managed. And the fun part for this is we always get to choose a name for the site. And since it was all women, this is the Queen's Delight rain collection site, because we also had to dig up a Queen's Delight flower for our building. So we felt bad about that. Another service project that a class before me did, which is a super cool one, is they partnered with the Zilker Nature Preserve to develop interpretive signage for that property. And I mean, these are some really beautiful signs. They partnered with a local artist, Brian Mabius, to design these. The signs are not up yet. We are still in the final stages of finishing that, getting approval and things put up when you're partnering with the city is not always the fastest of things. But this is another example of some stuff that CAM works on. This is another project we did last year, partnering with the Trail Foundation. They often do this project where they design owl boxes, and this was a very COVID project. So normally they put together these kits, members of the public come pick them up and stay, and everybody builds these boxes together. Well, obviously we couldn't do that last year. So we built kits, had people come by and pick them up, and then we did an online build together. So people could log on, we built it together with them, stayed and answered questions, and wrote up some real fancy PDF instructions, sent that out to everybody so they could build their own. So that was our hybrid project. But this kind of stuff is a great way to engage community members, people who might not know anything about owls or whatever, but they can get a free box. So why not? And then we get a chance to talk to them about screech owls, or for whatever the focus of the project is, and to give them a little bit of knowledge, and then hopefully to bring some nature and appreciation to families who might get an owl and start to take some time and slow down and observe things around them. I built one and still don't have an owl, so one day. And now I'm going to toss it over to Andrew, but I see that Roy has a question. But you're muted, Roy.
Okay, thank you very much. Where's the best place to locate a screech owl box so that it's safe from its predators, which in urban areas I would assume would be cats?
They say, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
No, go.
Oh, I made one for my brother-in-law, and so I looked it up. They say 15 to 30 feet up. So, higher than 30 feet is too high, lower than 15 is too low. And in a tree, and I guess you could cover it in hard plastic, and cats couldn't claw, you get the claws on it. I don't know.
Yeah, we were kind of told that for the most part, they're gonna scare off the cats. But yeah, like 15 feet up and just not immediately next to a house or anything. And of course, there's certain parameters of where to face it and all of this. So, but I think they the owls have like a 1 mile territory at least. So it's also kind of hard to get multiple ones in an urban area to come. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump into this slide. So I help coordinate this program on some of the lands that the group I work with, which I'll go into the next slide, what that group is, manages. And there are properties where there's biologist search tracts of land where biologists are looking at all of the golden cheek warblers that show up in the spring. They band a few of them, but they don't just put a silver band. They put a silver band with numbers on it. You can't see from far away, it's tiny. But they also put on colored bands on top of that. So they can have up to 3 colored bands and 1 silver band. And from afar with a camera, good binoculars, you could possibly see the color combination. And so you can say, hey, this individual has come back, or this individual is now located over here. And so we have biologists out in the field doing this, but they're limited to the amount of birds they can see and because there's amount of space that they can by themselves cover. So we have volunteers on tracts of land that abut that study track. And our volunteers are crucial to getting really good data because we need more educated eyes in the field. And so we have many of our volunteers are Capital Area Master Naturalists. That's why it shows up on this slide. And this is a lot of work. It takes a lot of training and coordination. And so if you're interested in about this, you can always email me. I'll put my email at the end of this. But the golden cheek resighting project is in full swing here soon. All right, go ahead and go to next. So I work for the Austin Wildlands Division, which is under Austin Water. And so there is lands that qualify as water quality protection lands and lands that are Balcones Canyonlands Preserve. This slide does a good job at showing Balcones Canyonland Preserve lands, which are owned by different entities, the city, the county, Nature Conservancy, LCRA, but they're all preserved to protect two birds, the black-cap vireo and the golden cheek warbler, and 6 different cave invertebrates. So on the BCP tracts of land, the city-owned ones, where there's also golden cheek warbler resighting happening, the focus is on getting habitat for endangered species in better sorts. So there's a lot of planting, there's a lot of seeding, there's a lot of weed wrench using. So a weed wrench is this apparatus right here. They come in different sizes, and it's a great way to get rid of some frustration. Y'all can't see my mouse move around, can y'all? There is the weed wrench, thank you. And so basically it gives you leverage and you're able to pull out with the roots ligustrum of certain sizes, and it's great. So it's a lot of giving life and taketh away of life as well. in these land restoration areas on the Balcones Cane Preserve, that which the Capital Area Master Naturalists help with a lot. But you can too, as a regular Joe Schmo and Jane Doe. You sign up at, I'll put this link in the chat here shortly, austintexas.gov/wildland events, and you can sign up to come out to these properties, help us out, and just having access to them, you'll often get a little tour and history and background. It's not just all work and no play. Here, what's happening here is there's a little bitty level, and they are digging a channel called a swell with a little rise of dirt next to it called a berm. And these berms and swells all of a sudden collect rainwater that would normally just wash off the hill because the land is so degraded due to bad land practices, overgrazing, what have you, that the soil is no longer there. So what Jim O'Donnell does, this guy, I'm pointing again, what Jim O'Donnell does is he goes out there with volunteers and gets this land in a much more diverse and healthy situation. In just a matter of years, you can see progress, just a year even. That's great. You go to the next slide. All right, so the other acronym, WQPL, that's Water Quality Protection Lands. So the city of Austin in '98 had a bond that voters approved to just outright buy land that was on top of the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. Oh, my dog is acting weird. So these lands are former ranches. And we have people collecting seed out there and also putting out seeds. So we're improving the diversity because native grasses have a better, much better roots, deeper roots for channeling rainwater down to the aquifer where it needs to be. Speaking of channeling water down to the aquifer, you could also be helping us with cave and karst work. All right, so it's not all just going really, really deep. Some of these caves are very shallow, and we are reestablishing a water intake to the aquifer. We call these recharge features swallets. Some of y'all probably heard of these things in prior Sierra Club meetings by Nico. Fuel moisture monitoring. Some of our volunteers that are trained can take the newest growth tips off plants and they put it into a special oven at our office, and it's a very specialized piece of equipment. And after 24 hours, they weigh it again and to see the amount of moisture that came out. Seed ripeness monitoring, a lot of real science that volunteers are getting to do. It's really fun to be out on these properties. And so next, Lisa. So once again, not just for Capital Area Master Naturalists, but they are in the know, and so they are often showing up to our guided hikes happening, and you can find those out at the website. I'll post on the chat here in a bit. And we have trained hike leaders that take people out on these properties, and as you can see, not much of a trail, and so you get to go off trail and look at some old homesteads and all kinds of cool history and all kinds of cool nature and places where, it's not 100 other people, clamoring on the trail with you. So great opportunities to learn. And we also show up with Capital Area Master Naturalist volunteers at different events like Austin Cave Festival, which is where the girls are on ropes, and some other event that's going on in the other picture. All right, next. So how can you keep track of us? Well, you can go to Austin Water Wildland Conservation on what's it called? Instagram and Facebook. I'll put those links in the chat as well. If you to keep up with us and find out what we're doing and what Capital Area Master Naturalists are doing on our properties as well. Thank you. Oh, not too much.
And this is you too, Andrew.
I thought this was David. No, I'll talk about it. Okay, we have volunteers that go out to the Breckenridge Field Lab, and what that is, that's a UT's research nature area right between Lake Austin Boulevard and Lady Bird Lake. And this tract of land, there's a lot of science happening on it, different, and not just stuff that grad students at UT are working on, but citizen science or community science, we call it now. Invasive species removal, bird surveys, plant phenology, pollinator demonstration gardens, and education outreach. Different programs happen out there as well.
And then I'll take back over. Yeah, so like Andrews was talking about, and David too, a lot of what we do is education, outreach, and service. So once we've trained our volunteers and they've gone through the program, then we want to get out. And if you're not digging in the dirt and planting trees somewhere, maybe you're working with kids and educating in some community events around town. So we take requests to participate at local events with community groups. This can be farmers markets, special events with partner organizations, neighborhood associations, school classrooms, clubs. Some of this is at the Wildflower Center, the Elizabeth Ney Museum, all kinds of stuff like this. We do a lot of tabling. I know Sierra Club does that as well at a lot of stuff. So we develop kits for ready to go activities that we can just pick up and go if someone calls. And that's a big part of our education and outreach. Another big thing that CAM is focused on now is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know this is a recent focus for a lot of groups. And so we are really trying to actively focus on increasing diversity, accessibility to our organization, but also working out in the community with accessibility to nature and natural spaces. The part of our mission says to work within our communities. And in order to do that, our organization really needs to represent our community. And so we formed a DEI committee back in 2017, and that is still a work in progress. It's something that we're going to continue to work on. The Texas Master Naturalists in 2020 started a Be the Change series where they're focusing on this conversation throughout the state and trying to make this an issue that we focus on equity, fair treatment, access, opportunity, and our focus obviously is on the natural world in this. It's a challenge. We're trying to diversify our speakers, instructors, and keep this conversation going. Some of the ways that we're doing that is trying to expand our avenues of outreach. We want to diversify our audience. We are looking at different partnerships we can form. We're trying to do stuff with children, with teenagers. We're starting a junior Master Naturalist program where we're going to, it's still in the works, but we're looking to work in community centers and neighborhoods, particularly on the East Side, and see how we can reach children with a free program to bring them out and teach them about the nature that's all around them. Finding ways to promote familiarity and comfort in the outdoors for everybody. We're also trying to connect nature and arts with different partnerships and just trying to bring in a diverse view of what nature is and how we can connect with different people across the community. So, why should you become a Master Naturalist? You already volunteer, you already love the earth, who cares? Well, because we're cool, first of all. And there's a lot of great perks to this. You get to gain in-depth knowledge from local experts, really amazing initial training. David and his team, they get amazing people from all over the area who are experts in their fields. You probably are familiar with a lot of our instructors that were on that list, and we have even more than that that we can pull from. the class coordinators work really hard to get relevant topics. This is, I mean, I learned so much, and I'm participating in the classes again as president and still learning more. It's a wealth of knowledge that they're providing. And then the main thing, volunteering. We are first and foremost a volunteer organization. That is the heart and soul of what being a master naturalist is. And we're building up that core of trained, educated volunteers who are dedicated. I think having a requirement of how many hours we have to get in a year to maintain our certified status, that in a 10-week long training, this already kind of helps us to have a core of people who are dedicated, who are putting in the time. They really, really want to do this, and they really care about their community. And it's, you know, again, it's not just digging in the dirt. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe it's educating people. Maybe it's working on the website. There's a lot of ways to contribute to the organization and to the work we do. But volunteering is a big part of it. And getting to go, like Andrew said, on properties that aren't necessarily open to the public, getting to tour these places, getting to work with experts and learning the whole time you're out there. And then getting to share that with new volunteers who come along, and now you're the expert. So it's a lot of give and take and constant learning. The continuing education, chapter meetings, state meetings, field trips, guides, lots of advanced training. And that's always fun. Networking, jobs, Andrew, friends, organizations, we're just, you know, getting to meet people. Like I will say for myself, when I joined the Master Naturalists, I was a part of Sierra Club, but that was it. And I wasn't even very involved. And once I did this and started meeting people, and, you know, I got really involved and over involved, and now this is all I do. So there's a lot of good benefits to this, and to getting out and just meeting other passionate people, and doing what you love and sharing that. And then, of course, as you can see, many of you know John Barr. This is his bling vest. We get pins, you know, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all the Scouts, they get their patches. Well, as adults, we get pins. You know, we can be trusted with sharp objects. And this is, you know, it's clearly not why we do it, but it's a lot of fun. And this is, you know, you get a pin when you complete your service every year, and then, you know, special pins when you reach certain milestones of hours of volunteer work. So, you know, a little fun top at the end there. And then just a little bit of numbers information about the Texas Master Naturalist program in general. Since it started, wow, now we have nearly 50 chapters statewide. Thousands of volunteers have trained, millions of hours of service across the state, impacting a lot of acreage, and educating and working with community members across the state. And one of thing that we hadn't mentioned yet about doing this is it also earns money for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. So our volunteer hours turn into funding. The Texas Master Naturalist program is funded through a federal aid grant with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They value our hours currently at about $23 an hour. So when we report our hours, that gets sent to Texas Parks and Wildlife and is a match for this grant. It's a grant that requires us to match, I think, 25% to 75% of the money that comes in. So, you know, that is why we report the hours. It's not just that we're trying to keep track. It does do some good with those dollars as well, supports the programs and other things that TPWD does. And just in case you are interested in joining this super cool group of people, we're not the only ones right here. So there are several other chapters that are nearby. Lost Pines, Goodwater, Bacones Canyonlands up at Concordia. Hayes County has a super active group, and the Highland Lakes up in Burnett. So if you decide that you're interested in this and you're looking for training and Capital Area has already started or it's full, there's a lot of other options nearby. You don't have to live exactly where your chapter is, as long as you're willing to drive and be a part of the work they're doing. So just a note.
So if someone wanted to get involved in the local group, would we need to wait until next spring?
Yes, well, until August. So our applications go up in August, and they'll be open for the month of August on our website. And we'll throw all of this into the chat when we're done, or if maybe they already have, I can't see the chat. But our applications go live in August. And then throughout the month of August, you can fill that in, then we'll close that. We'll accept the number we can. That's the issue is like we're limited in how many people we can service. So we take, I think David knows, like 30 to 35 students. And then you wait the next round. So.
And is there anything that people could do in the meantime to involve themselves in, perhaps other than the projects that Andrew has mentioned at Balcones Canyonlands? Are there other projects that they could volunteer with in the meantime?
Absolutely. CAM doesn't necessarily host much of our own volunteer work. We work in the community mostly with other groups. And so just being involved in any volunteer work in the community is what we look for when we're accepting applicants. And so any like Trail Foundation, Ecology Action, Circle Acres, any of the BCP and water quality protection lands, Sierra Club work. I mean, anything that's focused on conservation, stewardship of our natural resources, educating the public about natural resource management, any work like that is what we look for when we're taking on new members. And that's also a good way to meet other master naturalists and find out more about the program.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll put this information, if someone hasn't already, into the chat. We are trying to I'm trying to keep our Instagram very up to date, so it's a good way to keep up with what we're doing in a lot of the places that we volunteer in and organizations that we partner with. So you can follow us there. If you're not on the Instagram, that also shows up on the Facebooks. We are rebuilding our website now, but it is still there. And yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing, and if there's any questions.
Cool.
Could I chime in?
Andrew, Lisa and David, thank you guys. Y'all, everyone, yes, a round of applause. Everybody unmute. We're not done yet. We've got questions. And you guys put your questions in the chat box and I will feed them. Or you guys can access them too. But I want to start off while we're getting questions. Do you have a link? Is this presentation going to go up on the website?
I can give it to someone to have a link.
Yeah, I would like to post it in the CAMN next month.
Yeah, perfect. I'll send that to you.
Great.
Can I add?
And I wanted to follow up. Did the Chimney Swift Tower at Deep Eddy, is it occupied yet?
I don't know, Bruce.
That's always a fun thing.
Yeah.
All right. I got one more, and then see if there's some others from anybody else. And this is a natural science question: is what is going on with the late bud this year?
Oh, I don't know, but let me chime in with something that, like, 2 points I want to make real quicker. It's a very competitive chapter, but there are other chapters to join as well. And then if you end up doing more stuff in Austin, you can always transfer over after doing the classes somewhere else. And then the other thing I was going to say was the idea of being a master naturalist is kind of funny. but you do become a resource for your family and friends because you've taken these classes and you've met people who know things. And so people can be like, do you think a Native American ate this plant? You're on a hike somewhere, you go, I don't know, but I know an ethnobotanist, so I can ask, so just all the people you meet. That's my point I was going to make. All right, cool.
And you guys that is what's so cool. You may not know the answers. It's like climate science. I may not know the answer, but I can find out.
Right.
So y'all's opinion, have you heard anybody? I know you've been talking about it. Why is the bloom so late this year? It seems like it's a solid 3 weeks late.
I can offer a possibility. We had a freeze, and then we had a warm spell in the mid 80s, and then we had another freeze. And from what I can see with our plants, they made it through the first freeze, and the second freeze actually killed and some of our plants and just burned or froze the tops out of some. I think the plants had started to bud in that hot period between the two freezes. And now the plants are really reluctant to come out. We've got another possible freeze coming up this coming weekend.
That was one. That was one. I've been talking about this with lots of folks. But Andrew, Lisa, and David, you guys have any favorite theories, hypotheses?
I mean, when plants go dormant, there's no growth at the tips, but they become vulnerable when they start to grow. And I think Phoebe has a good postulation. I don't know, idea.
Well, just for a little bit difference on that, out in Oak Hill, there has been no, one species, our quince, a non-native species, flowering quince. And it's on its third bloom this year, but nothing else. Until about 4 or 5 days ago, first blue bonnet, the anemones 4 or 5 days ago started popping up, but there was nothing that had started out here. So yeah, I can understand in the warmer areas where that was happening. Bob Rose also told me at the LCRA office complex, one of the warmest spots in downtown, they always have the first mountain laurels and redbuds popping out. Nothing. They hadn't even started to get burned back. So any others?
Bruce, I've noticed that it's been pretty dry. This is Cliff Tillich. I've noticed it's been pretty dry lately, and I suspect that's why we're seeing a lot fewer things budding out. Not to take away from the notion that some things got nipped back. I've seen a lot of that. And that, by the way, is why I suspect the Arizona ash is a trash tree and the Texas ash is not. If you look, the Arizona ashes always bud out in early February and generally get caught by at least one more freeze. So they start putting out 2 or 3 more buds. Well, in multiples of 2, they start putting out 2 buds where there was 1, 2 secondaries where there was a primary. And you get all this trashy kind of growth. Texas ash doesn't leaf out until, late March, early April. So it's past all the freezes. Anyway. So
cool. That's another one. And to offer a different perspective on that, Bob says that since the first of the year, or largely, we've had about normal precip, but December was 12 degrees warmer than average. It's blasted the previous record by, I can't remember now if it's 5 or 7 degrees. So during a time of year when it's normally much colder, that much difference in warmth creates a tremendous amount more evaporation. So one of my bets is evaporative influenced drought. Anybody else got any others?
Well, I'll say that for what it's worth, cedar is still out there and high numbers of cedar pollen.
You're right.
And I've never seen it this late in the year before. And I have seen a lot of Mexican plum and others blooming trees, and the elm trees up and down my avenue are putting out. They are budding out right now. So I'm getting a double whammy of elm that I'm allergic to, and cedar, which is my yearly demon. So it just kind of, I've seen it in South Austin, North Austin, West Austin, and East Austin, but at different rates. And for me, the harbinger of spring is just down the street from me every year, that the lilacs bloom, and they have not started blooming yet. So for whatever it's worth.
Let's see. I've got one more. Does anybody else have any more? And then I'm going to go get some of these questions. At least I'm looking through them. There's a lot of good information in the chat about the Texas Master Naturalist classes that I'm not going to repeat. But you guys, go ahead, Barbara.
Bruce, so my Mexican plums are blooming. My red buds are beginning to bloom, but after that last freeze, they stopped, and they're now beginning to swell with the budding again. I have various things that are showing up, but yes, what I've seen is the buds swell. My cottonwood had buds out on it, and then when we got the freeze, it stopped and it's swelling again, and we're looking at possibly another freeze. My purple martins have shown up, and I'm concerned because they're showing up a month later than they normally do, and we still are looking at a freeze, and it only takes 3 days for them to starve without something to eat. So yeah, the weather, this freeze warm, to me, it's what's causing the problem.
Yeah, that's, all of these are good hypotheses, and in a few years we'll likely know. The only other thing I've got to add is the trees especially are susceptible to long-term stress, and the ice bomb last year was certainly a tremendous stressor event. So there could be something going on there too. Whatever it is really weird. And the daffodils were blooming in Virginia and North Carolina. A couple of friends up there before they were blooming down here this year. Just crazy stuff. Let's see, questions. This is still more questions about Master Naturalist classes. Brooke said the groundhog said 6 more weeks of winter. Yeah, I'm afraid I got something started in the chat too here. So again, a lot of great information. Anybody wants to do the the Master Naturalist classes, Travis and Hayes County. I presented out at Burnett too, and
let me jump in.
It
sounds like there are some wonderful volunteer opportunities that y'all participate in. Is there a site or two that you're especially aware of to find these activities that some families or nature lovers might be interested in doing if they knew where to look?
There are, unfortunately, there's not. I get this question a lot, and I wish there was such a site that stuck a lot of stuff in one place. You really have to go to each organization. The Wildlands has a really good website where they list all of the opportunities on the water quality protection and Balcones Canyonlands. Maybe Andrew can throw that into the chat. and that has a lot of different opportunities. Probably not so much for families. Trail Foundation does a lot of great opportunities, and I can throw that one into the chat. That's what I try to send people to if they have kids that they want to bring along with them. And that's, they steward the 10-mile loop around Lady Bird Lake. So that's a spot that a lot of people use and are familiar with. And Nature Rocks Austin, I saw Andrew through that. That's a great website that has a lot of information in one spot. I'm trying to think what some other.
Lisa, I wonder if you could send to me the list you had on one of your slides of the various organizations, and then I'll get that to Bruce and we can put it in the newsletter separately from your slides, because in case people are not looking through the slides, at least that list will be there. And I think that would be a really good service to our members to get them volunteering and trying to, make an effort with some of these organizations.
Okay, yeah,
We've
and
had-
I'll make sure that's a full list, and I'll connect it to
Okay.
the websites for those organizations and send that to you.
That'd be great. And
That would
we
be awesome.
have had several of those organizations, and actually this kind of season, we're trying to get more of those organizations like you in to speak with us and give us an idea of what's going on in our community, since we're not out there doing it in many cases. So thanks very much for your participation and for putting this whole slideshow together for us tonight. I hope you can use it. I'm sure you can use it in other
That's
ways,
the intention.
but-
So
yeah. But it's been a great slideshow, and you all three of you have spoken very well about the organizations, and we really appreciate your input. Bruce, I'll turn it back to you if there are any other questions or comments, or if anyone wants to throw up a hand.
Roy?
As a member of the.
I want to
Audubon
follow up on something after this.
Bruce, someone
Absolutely, it
else.
was a fantastic presentation. I agree. David and Andrew were great. Lisa was okay. And I mean, all three of you were great. But I do have a Sierra Club issue I'd like to address before the meeting is over.
There is there was one other, someone had a hand up to speak.
Barbara.
It was me. I just want to say, as a member of the Travis Audubon Society as well, they have all kinds of opportunities for volunteering and are always looking for volunteers to help. So just throwing that out there.
What was the name of that group again?
The Travis Audubon Society.
Okay, Travis Audubon, okay.
they do a lot of great hikes and walks and stuff too that you can participate in.
And before we get to Roy, what is the Capital Area Master Naturalists' next service opportunity?
Well, we don't really host our own service opportunities. I am trying to build a partnership between us and Circle Acres with Ecology Action of Texas. So that might be something that we will do and maybe open up to the public to sign up for. That's still in the works. And that's
what
a
I'm
cool
thinking of.
organization on the east side that we want to get more involved in. But otherwise, it's just going to the community and serving the community with other groups that are already out there.
But I'm sure Andrew could speak about service projects that are available through wildlands or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, want to know about what's going on? I don't have it pulled up, but I've looked at it enough today to see, like, we have seeding, which you rake up a bit of ground, spread up a little seed, and spread a little dirt on top. When you do it with people, you get to chat while you're doing it, and that's happening on the Onion Creek tract of land, which is on Onion Creek. And once you sign up, you get an email like a day or two prior with the actual location otherwise we're real ambiguous about like where it is. It's, you know, close to this intersection. There's stuff happening on a track on south of Onion Creek. There's doing seeding. Let's see, we have a guided hike about warblers coming up while there should be here. That's pretty exciting.
What's the website for those activities, Andrew?
I put it in the chat a couple times. And somebody else did. austintexas.gov/wildland events.
Great.
We have other guided hikes coming up too. A brand new one we're excited to unveil that's family friendly. I mean, for the kids who can, you know, actually trample over rocks and what have you, on the CRC track on Onion Creek. You'll get to see swallets, those little recharge features that if the water's flowing, make a big whirlpool.
And I'll make a plug too for the Balcones Canyonlands, because that's where I spend a lot of my time. The website, the same as with Andrew's, it's the Vireo Preserve. We're out there Sundays and Tuesdays, and then a newish property, Double J&T, which is I think 100 and something acre tract of land. I could have made that number up. It's up by Lake Travis Elementary, and we're doing a lot of forest restoration work up there. So if folks are interested in forest restoration, Vireo and Double J&T are some great sites to get to go out and really see the change as it's happening. I mean, these lands are super degraded. They were kind of turned into ranch lands, and then we're working to really bring back that habitat and for the, you know, for the endangered species as well. So those are worth checking out.
That's cool. And I want to remind everybody that there's so many good links in the chat. If you did not know this, you can go down to the bottom right of the chat next to where you enter stuff. There are 3 dots, a menu. You can click on that menu, and at the very top, you can save the chat and save all these wonderful links, all this wonderful information.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
And anyone can do it. And this has been just, you know, love it. This is the club stuff, you know.